participants. It is a true honor to welcome all of you to this wonderful occasion in the journey of Amity Institute of Public Policy, Amity University, Uttar Pradesh.
In the words of our founder president, Sir Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, Amity is not just a group of institutions which imparts world class education, but an experience where everybody associated is part of a dream, a mission to see that we nurture truly great leaders. With that being said,
I am Kesia Kungumon.
and I am Somsurjo Ganguly.
We extend a heartfelt welcome to each one of you as we gather for the third edition of the International Conference on Public Policy, ICOPP 2025, organized by Amity Institute of Public Policy, Amity University, Uttar Pradesh.
Today, we gather under the theme of Rethinking Public Services, Advancing Policy, Delivery, and Impact.
As we commence this intellectual odyssey, it is a privilege to have such distinguished members joining us for this academic discourse. To formally begin the session, may I request Dr. Yogendra Singh, Head of Amity Institute of Public Policy, to formally welcome the gathering.
A very good morning to our esteemed guests, colleagues on the dais, off the dais. On behalf of Amity Institute of Public Policy, Amity University, Uttar Pradesh, I take this opportunity to welcome one and all and our Honorable Founder President Sir, Honorable Chancellor Sir, Honorable Vice Chancellor Madam, a very heartfelt welcome to Chief Guest, Guest of Honor, guests, deans, head of institutions, professors, and my dear students. Amity Institute of Public Policy offers Bachelor Honors in Public Administration, Masters in Public Administration and Public Policy and Governance, and PhD program in Public Policy and Governance. Our alumni are well placed and are working in various leading organizations, tech giants, and policy think tanks. In a short span of time, AIPP has been engaged in delivering all-round education to its students, which blends classroom learning with extracurricular and academic activities. AIPP is holding its signature event, that is International Conference on Public Policy, ICOPP 25, as testament to the amazing work being done at the institution. ICOPP 25 will focus on key drivers of change in public service delivery, including technological innovations, sustainable financing models, and community-driven social entrepreneurship. Topics will explore how digital governance, data-driven decision-making, and collaboration financial frameworks are redefining public services to meet urban, rural populations' diverse needs. Situating the Indian experience globally, the conference will delve into the critical issues of resource management, equitable service distribution, and community engagement. It will evaluate policy response and can bridge the delivery gap on marginalized communities, enhance transparency and efficiency in governance, and incorporate citizen participation as a core component of public service improvement. Additionally, the conference will investigate emerging social and entrepreneurship model as a vehicle for societal change, resilient economic growth. ICOP 25 aspires to be a catalyst for action, bringing together a global community of thought leaders to chart a course towards sustainable, inclusive public service framework. Once again, thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Singh. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that we invite our guest of honor today, Professor Dr. Rumki Basu, a luminary in the field of public policy, to share her valuable insights and perspectives with us. Dr. Rumki Basu is the head of Center for Public Policy and Governance, Institute of Social Sciences. Along with 36 years of teaching experience in political science in Delhi University and Jamia Millia Islamia, she has also been bestowed with the Indian Council of Social Sciences Research Teacher Fellowship Award. She received the Bharat Jyoti Award in 2013 by the India International Friendship Society and is a recipient of the Mary Hamilton Award in 2021 for the major contribution that she has made to the field of international public administration by the American Society for Public Administration. She has also received the Mohit Bhattacharya Lifetime Achievement Award in the field of public administration in the year 2025. Over the years, she has published several books and articles on the issue of public policy and governance, international organizations, and political economy of development in India. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rumki Basu.
As a guest of honor, I'm supposed to get about 5 minutes. So she just said, your Madam Binisha Banerjee looked at me sternly and said 2 minutes. I think that's not fair. I'm supposed to be speaking till your Vice Chancellor comes. So I take this opportunity to say a little more than what was perhaps mandated for me. Let me introduce the subject thus. Most of you are students here, that the point in question today, the point of debate today, is about the provisioning of public goods to citizens through public bureaucracy, which has been an old practice in public administration and one of the key themes for deliberation in the discipline's discourses in the past 4 decades. Administrative theory tells us that governments produce public goods through collective binding decisions to which all citizens are expected to contribute as taxpayers and from which all citizens are beneficiaries without exclusion. The inherent dilemmas involved in practice are in the varying support for public sector provisioning of these goods and services over time. Until the 1970s, there was a strong belief, especially in developed countries, that an expansion of the welfare state was essentially a government guarantee of a good life to a citizen for his lifetime. The public provisioning is required to offset inequality, a fact of life in all societies, to ensure the equal access to public goods of the socially excluded and the marginalized. During the 1980s, it was believed that public goods had to be transformed into semi-public goods that required individual contributions, or preferably into private goods that removed them from public sector provisioning. Privatization emerged in healthcare, public transport and sanitation, the maintenance of the commons, recreational facilities, education, and even traditional police tasks as traffic control. The anti-public sector political agendas of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and President Ronald Reagan during the 1990s, the budget deficits all over the world in several economies that many governments face, Osborne and Gabler's reinventing government in 1992 served as catalytic in the worldwide acceptance of the principles of what came to be known as new public management. What was being attacked in new public management, which is still an ongoing discourse, is that in every state, public goods need to be delivered by the public sector alone through monopolistic public bureaucracies as sole service providers. This notion is being attacked. Therefore, the search for effective and efficient alternative modes of service delivery continues to be one of the key concerns in public administration. ranging from full privatization to public-private partnerships, contracting out, co-production, transforming collective goods into semi-collective goods, and so on. Furthermore, the role of government in these arrangements has become a crucial question. Should it be monopolistic, facilitating, regulating, steering, rowing, or serving citizens as clients, as customers, or as user groups? This is what we are going to debate today. The basic, I would say, the point of discussion, and which has been going on for 4 decades now. Let me move on to what other alternative discourses were going on at the same time, because I do believe that in the North developed group of countries, they are all equilibrating politico administrative regimes that follow certain standard rational patterns catering to legality, objectivity, value neutrality, and universalism in their dealings with citizens. In a parallel development, during the NPM period itself, developing countries were bridging in development through proactive state interventions in key sectors of the economy, human development, and state sponsored what is today called disruptive innovations. More of that later. Through indigenous technology, governing development therefore became an ongoing concern in all countries. In all these efforts, the point that you should note is the state market divides had to be clearly demarcated by political mandates, especially in countries of the South. There were other questions too. How can citizens be empowered in a democracy? An old eternal question starting from the Greek city states of city democracies long back. And this is an eternal ongoing question. Now, it's important to endow public services with the capacity, technical skills, and resources needed so that politico administrative regimes can deliver what most citizens want today: food and nutrition, education, basic healthcare, and sustainable livelihoods. Another big challenge, and there's a reason why I'm mentioning this, for political regimes in both the North and the South are the challenges of diversity, equity, and inclusion at all levels of the bureaucracy to make them more representative and inclusive. President Biden's administration had made unprecedented strides in upholding these public service values, which has been completely reversed by the Trump regime, as you all know. Of the 2 million government workers across the US, President Trump has already fired 10,000, apparently on charges of redundancy or what his administration calls underperformance. The federal workforce is in turmoil. Neither the judiciary nor employee unions are able to intervene successfully. Trump wants to rebuild American manufacturing by disowning its international commitments in a non-engagement policy. So therefore, the US, and look at the US story, and this didn't begin with President Trump, by the way. The US has privatized everything from public health, weather, roads, communications, education, energy, and even policy analysis. So our corporations, the new US governance, and you know the role of Elon Musk in President Trump's administration. So this is a question that bothers me. Are corporations the new US governance? Of course, there have been other developments globally like digitalization of public services. And this is what brings me to the Indian story, that India's digital public infrastructure is an example to the rest of the world as to what the benefits of digitalization can bring in terms of citizen centricity and inclusivity of administration. Others can emulate the India story. So today, India and China are important icons of development, growth, and service delivery. But let me tell you what Francis Fukuyama, the eminent American political scientist, had said some time back, that China's labor exploitative and unfriendly ecological model is not exportable as a sustainable model to the rest of the world. However, The point to note for countries like India is that China has implemented almost all SDGs and India is only halfway through. India needs to send a message to all developing countries today that democracies need not always be soft. They can transit to a hard one by delivering slow but steady good governance. The beauty of democracy is that its policy process is based on a self corrective process of incrementalism. Only by delivering on SDGs at a faster pace, correcting the inequities in citizen access to public goods and services in the 28 states of India, and improving public service delivery at the grassroots level through the nearly 3 lakh gram panchayats in India, without doing that, we cannot really rethink or reinvent public service delivery systems in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Your profound insights and valuable contributions to the field of public policy have been truly enlightening. Your wisdom and dedication serve as an inspiration to us all, and we are immensely grateful for the knowledge you have shared today. Now, it is my great pleasure to invite our conference chair, Dr. Vidisha Banerjee, Deputy Director and Associate Professor at AIPP, the driving force behind this conference, to present the concept note and an overview of ICOP 25. Please welcome her.
Dr. Rumki Basu, we have a lot to hear from you. So I just wanted, as people come, they can collect the wisdom that you will give. Everyone can be great because everyone can be served and can serve. Good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, and students. It's an honor to welcome you all to our international conference on public policy titled Rethinking Public Policy, Rethinking Public Services, Analyzing Policy Delivery and Impact. We are at a pivotal moment in the evolution of public services, facing challenges like climate change, inequality, and health crisis. Public services are central to the well-being of societies, but when they fail, the consequences are dire. Mistrust, inequality, and stagnation. Mahatma Gandhi said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. True public policy begins with understanding and serving others. The delivery of public services is undergoing a digital revolution, which was also highlighted by Professor Rumki Basu. E-governance platforms make it easier for citizens to access services, improving efficiency and transparency. However, technology must be inclusive, bridging the digital divide to ensure equitable access. In the words of the wise Albert Einstein, the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. We must embrace innovation to public services, to public service delivery, while ensuring no one is left behind. The impact of public services cannot be measured merely by outputs, something which we emphasize a lot in our classes in the Department of Public Policy. True impact is about outcomes, how services empower individuals and improve lives. Obama said the best way to solve our problem is to get people engaged in finding solutions. This is what we are doing here. We have a community of people out here who are going to be empowered and help us find solutions. As we continue and begin this conference, let's challenge ourselves to rethink how we design policies, deliver services, and measure impact. Hence, keeping this thought in mind, the International Conference on Public Policy, which we call lovingly ICOPP, was created as a platform to facilitate such discussions and provide a space where varied stakeholders can come together and deliberate on our contemporary issues. With this, let the conference begin. Welcome to ICOPP 2025, Amity University, Noida.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your enlightening words of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have been honored with the presence of a remarkable personality, a visionary leader, and an inspiration for many. He is none other than our chief guest, Shri V. Srinivas IAS. Shri V. Srinivas is currently serving as the Secretary to Government of India, Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, and Department of Pension and Pensioners' Welfare at the Ministry of Personal Public Grievances and Pension. A distinguished civil servant, he joined the prestigious Indian Civil Service at the young age of 22. In his 3-decade-long service, he has held several prestigious positions in the Government of India and the Government of Rajasthan, contributing significantly to the fields of finance, health, public administration, and international relations. His international engagements have strengthened India's global presence. He has represented our nation in key forums such as the Commonwealth Conference of Secretaries of Public Service, International Monetary Fund, and various key multilateral forums. A true embodiment of leadership, dedication, and service, he has made remarkable contributions to public services and governance. A champion of digital governance, he pioneered platforms like CPGRAMS, e-Office, and Bhavashya, revolutionizing public service delivery. An accomplished author and scholar, his contributions to public administration serves as an inspiration to policymakers worldwide. His remarkable contributions have also been recognized with numerous awards, like the Rajbhasha Kirti Puraskar 2024 for promoting Hindi, the Digital India Award 2020 for implementation of e-governance initiatives, the AIMS Leadership Excellence Award 2017 for digital transformation in healthcare, to name a few. It is an honor for Amity Institute of Public Policy to have him as our chief guest for ICOP 2025. Sir, we humbly welcome you to this conference and we look forward to your valuable insights and words of wisdom. Please give a big round of applause and welcome Shri V. Srinivas for delivering the inaugural address.
Very good morning to all. A very good morning to all. Dr. Bidisha Banerjee, the convener of this event, Professor Rumki, my good friend, Dr. Yogendra Singh, distinguished colleagues. It's my great privilege to address the delegates of the Third International Conference on Public Policy, the ICOP 25, the Amity Institute of Public Policy. The theme of the conference, Rethinking Public Services, Advancing Public Policy, Delivery and Impact, is timely and relevant. I'm grateful to Dr. Bidisha Banerjee for inviting me for this event today. In fact, when we discussed my participation a few days ago, I said that the subject of rethinking public service delivery is a very key subject. In fact, even in the International Institute of Administrative Sciences DRPG conference that we had from February 10th to 14th, in which more than 750 international delegates participated. The Amity Institute of Public Policy, through its various programs, the master's programs, the graduate programs, has tried to impart a deeper understanding into the making, implementation, and assessment of public policy, both in developing countries as also in the developed world, and has examined several global policy regimes. As a student of public administration for over 37 years now, I must admit that this subject has promoted individual growth and also tremendous institutional growth. And it has growing relevance and significant future. A nation first, a citizen first approach can enable rethinking of public services, advance policy, delivery, and impact. The centrality of the citizen in the governance journey is of paramount importance. For my inaugural address, I'll be speaking to you on administrative reforms and government efficiency. And let me start with a quote from Honorable Prime Minister Modi, which says that in this decade of Amrit Kal, we will give priority to next generation reforms. We will ensure that all facilities like service delivery should reach citizens at the last mile. It should reach the last person seamlessly, without hesitation or difficulty. For the overall development of the country, unnecessary interference by the government and government processes in the lives of citizens has to be ended. This is a quote that has been from the Independence Day address of the Honorable Prime Minister from the ramparts of Red Fort on 15th August 2021. And that lays down the policy in which India's administrative reforms and improving service delivery policies are to be formulated. The foundational principles for administrative reforms and government efficiency, as outlined by Professor Rumki in her address, include rule of law, public service ethics, integrity, probity, impartiality, citizen-centered services, skilled responsive workforce, an assault on big government. There are other areas like performance evaluation, e-governance, social security and service-centered government, emergency management, urban management, human rights, cultural diversity, and also social cohesion. Let me quote Professor Andrew Massey from his Bribant lecture, which I heard on February 12th. Of all the above traits, the redressal of public grievances is the most profound and most ancient in terms of written law and the foundations of good governance. It structures the relationship between politics, the administrative state, and the citizens. It is the frequently discussed and core of good governance and central to social reform. So the next generation reforms that have been ushered in by the government in the last decade are largely based upon what have been enunciated in the Panch Pran, the 5 resolutions that the Prime Minister pronounced from the ramparts of Red Fort that seek to have a goal of a developed India, to remove any trace of colonial mindset, to take pride in our roots, and a sense of duty among citizens. The agenda of governance is the policy of maximum governance, minimum government, which envisages a digitally empowered citizen and a digitally transformed institution. Bringing government and citizens closer using technology is important for ease of living and ease of doing business. The Digital India program has envisaged to digitize every information that is available with government on a public platform. Accordingly, government has sought to improve qualitative improvements in grievance redressal systems, a whole of government approach in formulating policies, capacity building programs for its employees through the Mission Karma Yogi, ICOPP platforms, as also constant monitoring of the quality of governance using effective metrics. At the heart of this policy making is also the principle of social equity, justice, transparency, and accountability. In fact, the vision is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas. This has been the overarching development goal of the nation. Let me speak to you about a few digital platforms today. The centralized public grievance redressal mechanism, which is India's largest portal for timely and qualitative grievance redressal and direct contact with citizens. The CP Grams today is the world's largest citizens interface, and it has adopted technology which is of very advanced usage, including AI. It is adopted by all ministries and departments and has contributed significantly to improved governance and public service delivery. There are several collaborative partners behind running such a large public platform. That is the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. There is the Center for Good Governance, Hyderabad, the National Institute of Smart Governance, as also the National Informatics Center, the Bharat Sanchar Nigam, the Common Service Centers, the CDAC, Ashini, Quality Council of India. In fact, 14 knowledge partners have worked together. The implementation of a 10-step CP-grams reform ensured that the timelines of grievance redressal as also the quality of grievance redressal have improved. More than 100,000 officers are mapped on this platform and over 30 lakh citizens are registered on this platform. And this platform has redressed over 1 crore 20 lakh grievances in the last 5 years. It is a massive public interface in terms of improving service delivery. It has received massive international as also national appreciation. The India Today magazine called it as amongst the 100 big technology ideas to take Bharat into a Viksit Bharat nation. It has also been appreciated as a state-of-the-art grievance redressal portal by the Commonwealth Secretariat for replication in 56 countries. When you speak of improving service delivery, you have a very large group of government employees who will need to reskill themselves and upskill themselves to meet the demands of a digital technological governance model. And that was being envisaged under the Mission Karma Yogi platform, which seeks to ensure that civil servants keep themselves abreast with latest technology advancements. The transformation from a karmachari to a karma yogi, a workplace transformation, as also the shift from a rule-based civil servant to a role-based civil servant are what are the transformations that are envisaged under Mission Karma Yogi. And millions of India's civil servants are undergoing this transformation by adopting numerous modules which are oriented for behavioral competency changes as also functional competency changes. How do you improve efficiency in government? Increasing efficiency in governance has been one of the overarching models and one of the overarching pursuits across governments. Over the past decade, this has been achieved through a two-pronged approach. One is called the Initiative for Increasing Efficiency in Decision Making, and the second is the special campaigns for institutionalizing Swachhata and reducing pendency. The Initiative for Increasing Efficiency in Decision Making is one of the pioneering administrative reforms to speed up decision making. In fact, it was an extremely complicated and far reaching reform that was undertaken in the Central Secretariat to bring in a silent reform in work culture, reduce hierarchies, and significant adoption of technology. A flatter organizational structure was envisaged and put in place with delegation both at administrative as also at financial levels. And to run a 21st century secretariat, the manual of office procedure was rewritten to ensure that the digital march of the secretariat to adopt 100% digitization practices was taken up. The channels of submission were brought down from 8 levels in 2020 to 4 levels in 2024. And this was possible because strong e-governance platforms like EHRMS were adopted to ensure that administrative as also financial delegations could be properly mapped out. Technology adoption by optimizing the e-office platform was promoted through amendments in the Central Secretariat Manual of Office Procedure. And today, the Central Secretariat has more than 40 lakh files as e-files and more than 500,000 receipts as processed as e-receipts. So this is almost 95% of the total files being processed as e-files and almost 96% of the total receipts being processed as e-receipts. The special campaigns for institutionalizing Swachhata and reducing pendency in government seek to bring improved records management practices as also sanitization protocols and above all technology adoption into the Central Secretariat. This campaign, implemented from October 2nd to 31st of every year, has also been institutionalized to be undertaken by every government employee for 3 hours every week. It has produced significant reforms. More than 11 lakh office spaces the campaign for Swachhata has been undertaken. 131 lakh physical files have been weeded out. 650 lakh square feet of office space has been freed up, and 2,364 crores of revenue has been earned through scrap disposal. It adopted a whole of government approach and brought significant reduction in pendency. As also, consistent monitoring enabled increased efficiency levels in government. One of the foundational principles of governance has been what is not monitored is simply not done. So, the Central Secretariat Manual of Office Procedures modernization, as also establishing strong digital platforms, created a monitoring framework which ensured significant results. In fact, the Honorable Prime Minister in his Mann Ki Baat, as also through a number of tweets, has commended the special campaign. And let me mention what he says in his Mann Ki Baat, dated November 24, 2024. In this, he has said, "My dear countrymen, you must have noticed that as soon as someone mentions a government office, a picture of a pile of files emerges in your mind. You must have seen something similar in films also. Many jokes are made on these piles of files in government offices. Many stories have been written, and these files used to gather dust lying in offices for years and years and needed weeding out. A special Swachhata campaign was launched to remove decades old files and scrap, and you'll be happy to know that this campaign has brought amazing results in departments. Cleanliness has freed up a lot of office spaces, and this has also brought in a sense of ownership amongst people working in the offices. They have become serious about keeping their office spaces clean. We've also tried to evolve metrics. How does India's governance model compare with other nations? How do our states compare with each other? The Good Governance Index is a state of assessment, is an assessment of the quality of governance models across states of India. And the District Good Governance Index represents the quality of assessment across districts of India. So these monitor in about 10 categories, 64 indicators across multiple sectors ranging from agriculture, commerce and industry, human resource development, public health, public infrastructure, economic governance, social welfare, judiciary and public safety, environment and citizen-centric governance. Traditionally, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra have consistently been the top performers of the Good Governance Index. Gujarat is a top performer across several sectors, and this has been further reinforced through the district good governance indices, which ensure that the quality of governance at district level, which is our foundational unit, is monitored across the nation. To monitor the quality of e-services, there are multiple digital platforms. The National E-Services Delivery Assessment has been formulated, and the National E-Services Delivery Assessment has been a significant contributor in improving service delivery. And I can say that today we have more than 75% of the services that India is providing are provided as e-services. This is a significant jump from what we had, say, 5 years ago, when we had about 48% of the total services as e-services. Over 19,500 services are currently being provided as e-services. And these reports are published on a monthly basis called the National E-Services Delivery Assessment Way Forward. A number of services that are most commonly availed by young students, citizens, caste certificates, income certificates, birth certificates, death certificates, e-payments of electricity bills, PAN card applications, corrections in filing income tax returns, driving licenses, Jeevan Praman, and these I have noticed have been receiving very high satisfaction levels from the students. It is also important to recognize meritocracy, and meritocracy at service level is monitored through a series of awards called the Prime Minister's Awards for Excellence in Public Administration and the National E-Governance Awards. The theme on which the awards are being conferred are Viksit Bharat, empowering citizens and reaching the last mile with regard to holistic development of districts adopting a saturation approach. To disseminate good practices, regional conferences are held at various state capitals, and these are attended not only by academicians but also practicing administrators who share the challenges and the work that they have done in ensuring award winning nominations are replicated and disseminated. So, we've had regional conferences at Srinagar, Bengaluru, Itanagar, Mumbai, Bhopal, Jaipur, Guwahati, Raipur, Gandhinagar in the recent past, in the last 3 years, and these have contributed significantly in our efforts for saturating e-services across the nation. To celebrate good governance, India also celebrates the Sushasan Saptah or the Good Governance Week from December 19 to 24th every year. And this actually takes governance to the grassroots level. More than 50,000 camps are held at village level and tehsil level, in which the district collectors participate from more than 790 districts. And when the nation's administrative systems work in unison, the firepower is quite significant. More than 400 lakh service delivery applications have been redressed in 5 days between December 19 to 24th, and more than 50 lakh grievance redressal applications have also been redressed. It has also enabled to make the ecosystem transparent, faster, and qualitative. Let me also brief you on how senior citizens, particularly pensioners, the ease of living, as also digital empowerment is being pursued. The Bhavishya platform is one which ensures that end-to-end digitization of the pension process is taken up. In India, with almost 2 crore pensioners, has a very significant population which needs digital empowerment and transformation. Another important reform has been the adoption of the Pension Adalat, wherein which the pensioner comes and appears before government to redress issues that pertain to his pension payments. We've also pursued digital empowerment of pensioners as a stated policy objective through the Digital Life Certificates campaign, particularly using face authentication, which takes a mere 20 seconds for the pensioner to submit his life certificate sitting from the confines of his residence. How do you keep governance systems compact, functional, and energetic? One of the new and futuristic models of governance is the Chintan Shivir. And the Chintan Shivir as a concept has gained considerable momentum. In fact, we had our Chintan Shivir last year, in which the Honorable Prime Minister participated for almost 45 minutes. And the Chintan Shivir brings together all levels of employees to share their success stories and their contributions to ensuring institutional success. And Prime Minister Modi shared his vast experiences in governance, and he urged officials that impersonal models of governance need to find life through deep personal commitment. Systems of governance जीवंत रहना चाहिए. To keep live models of governance can be achieved through personal interactions, spending time together to think about common good and to seek happiness in every job that is assigned. I've also had the opportunity to work with a number of states in implementing administrative reforms and improving government efficiency, particularly with focus on improved service delivery. To improve service delivery, one of the basic features that we have written is we've asked every state to pursue a digital secretariat by updating their manuals of office procedures. The right to services commissions have been established in all states with focus on improving service delivery. And particularly in northeastern states, service delivery improvements through adoption of more and more e-services is being pursued. So let me conclude by saying that I have presented the vast gamut of work that has been undertaken over the past decade by government in transforming India's service delivery platforms and the efforts for improving grievance redressal. The 182-meter Statue of Unity at Kevadia of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel provides inspiration for the nation's relentless commitment to excellence during the Amritkal period. To conclude, let me once again quote Honorable Prime Minister from his visit to the United States Congress in 2023. In the last century, when India won its freedom, it inspired many other countries to free themselves from colonial rule. In this century, when India sets benchmarks in growth, it will inspire many other countries to do the same. So, with these remarks, let me wish Dr. Bidisha Banerjee and each of the delegates a very successful ICOP 25. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shri V. Srinivas. I think it was a wonderful um, amalgamation of what the government has undertaken and has done in this sector of public services. And we are really, really thankful and delighted that you have been here with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Your words have been nothing short of extraordinary, a beacon of wisdom, igniting minds and inspiring futures. Your unparalleled insights and visionary leadership have left an indelible mark on all of us, especially the young scholars who aspire to follow in your esteemed footsteps.
It is with great honor and respect that we welcome our esteemed Vice Chancellor, Ma'am, Professor Dr. Balwinder Shukla Amritsar. Professor Dr. Balwinder Shukla has over 3 decades of rich experience in industry, academia, research, and administration. She has been one of the key team members spearheading the exponential growth of the Amity Group's engagement in higher education. Under her astute leadership, AUUP has been ranked among the top 3% universities globally by QS in THE, the world's leading university ranking organization, and achieved various prestigious accreditations. Dr. Shukla is a strategist, an institution builder, an inspirational leader, and quality networker. She's a social change maker and driven by innate passion, determination, perseverance, and enormous compassion. Dr. Shukla is also the recipient of numerous prestigious awards and honors for her extraordinary contribution in education, research, social engagements, and entrepreneurship development. Please join me in warmly welcoming our Vice Chancellor, Ma'am, as she shares her valuable insights.
We have now arrived at the highlight of today's event, the unveiling of the conference proceedings. This marks a significant intellectual contribution to the field of public policy. May I request our distinguished chief guest, Shri V. Srinivas, our guest of honor, Professor Dr. Rumki Basu, conference chair, Dr. Bidisha Banerjee, and Dr. Yogendra Singh, to join the dignitaries for the book launch.
Keeping in line with amateur universities' strong commitment to sustainability, the booklets have been wrapped in the newspaper.
What a proud moment indeed for Amity Institute of Public Policy. Let us celebrate this moment with a warm round of applause to commemorate this landmark achievement. Respected dignitaries, delegates, and fellow academicians, it is now time for us to express our gratitude and honor to our distinguished guests. As a mark of felicitation, we present the Uttorio, a handcrafted cotton stole that symbolizes India's ethnic diversity, sustainability, and spirit of service. As a sign of our mutual commitment to environmental sustainability, we are presenting a sapling to our guests. Along with that, we would also like to present our guests with a memento to solidify this solemn occasion.
May I now request our conference chair, Dr. Bidisha Banerjee, to felicitate Dr. Rumki Basu with a sapling.
May I now request our chief guest and guest of honor to please felicitate our faculty members. Thank you. Thank you.
I would request a guest of honor, Dr. Rumki Basu, to felicitate our faculty members. I would request our HOI Sir, Dr. Yogendra Singh, to please step forward. I would now invite Dr. Chandrima Das, conference convener and faculty at Amity Institute of Public Policy, to please come forward. Thank you so much, Dr. Rinki Basu, for doing the honors. I would request you all to please take the stage. While thanking the Almighty for His countless blessings, we're here to spell out words of thanks. We now invite Dr. Chandrima Das, conference convener and faculty at AIPP, to deliver the closing remarks for this session. Let us give her a warm round of applause.
Good morning, everyone. I feel extremely honored to stand before you and express my heartfelt gratitude towards the end of the inaugural session of ICOPP 2025, organized by Amity University, Amity Institute of Public Policy. On behalf of the Institute, I would like to extend a warm thank you to our esteemed chief guest, Shri V. Srinivas, IAS, Secretary to the Government of India, Department of Administrative Reforms and Public Grievances, for his insightful lecture. My sincere thanks to Professor Dr. Rumki Basu, Director, Center for Public Policy and Governance, Institute of Social Sciences, New Delhi, for her presence in our conference. I extend a special thanks to our founder president, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, and our Chancellor, Dr. Atul Chauhan, for their blessings and guidance. I thank Professor Dr. Balvinder Shukla, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Amity University, for gracing the conference and sharing her blessings. I owe my profound gratitude to Additional Pro Vice Chancellor Dr. Sanjeev Bansal for his unwavering support and guidance. Thank you all for being a lovely and enthusiastic audience. Please join us for the high tea. Panel discussion will follow shortly. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chandrima Das. With that, we come to an end of our inaugural session. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I would request our guests to please proceed for the high tea. Thank you. Optimizing service delivery and maximizing impact to build a more efficient and inclusive governance model.
Absolutely. We are honored here to have with us an esteemed panel of experts who bring a wealth of experience and knowledge and diverse perspectives across governance, technology, climate policy, and public administration. Let's extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished panelists, Dr. Mitra, Director at PwC, who will be moderating this insightful session.
We also have with us Mr. Amitabh Sinha, Editor Climate Change and Science at the Indian Express, whose expertise in environmental policy and scientific advancements is invaluable. We request Mr. Sinha to please step forward.
Also joining us is Ms. Meghna Pal, Director at ESYK Center, a thoughtful leader in digital governance and policy innovation.
Next on our panel, we have Dr. Niranjan Sahu, Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, renowned for his work on democracy, human rights, electoral reforms, and governance.
Also joining us is Mr. Chandan Dixit, Director at PwC, a specialist in clean energy, electricity market liberalization, and emerging energy technologies.
We welcome all our panelists on board. From evolving policy frameworks to digital transformation, climate resilience to emerging technologies, today's discussion promises to offer profound insight into the future of public service system. Our panelists will share their perspectives on how to drive efficiency, equity, and effectiveness in governance through innovative solutions and strategic reforms.
So, without further ado, let's begin this exciting conversation. I would now request the moderator for this session, Dr. Indranil Mitra, to take over the discussion. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Amity University. Thank you, Professor Banerjee, for inviting me. This is my second time here. I think we'll need some more people to come forward. If you're sitting back, you can come forward and we'll begin immediately. So, the theme of our panel is rethinking public service, advancing policy delivery and impact, and we will discuss in this panel the ideas and issues for making public service serve India better. I think the complete platform was set by Mr. Srinivas when he gave his keynote, and he spoke about the amazing technological advances that have been brought into the government service delivery for its citizen. Basically, I think Viksit Bharat on hyperdrive for now. And we have a great panel here who will speak from their experiences, and I'm sure you'll be enlightened by them. So, without further ado, I will go to our first panelist, Mr. Sinha, who is the editor for Climate Change and Sciences in the Indian Express, with his focus area being climate change. Welcome, Mr. Sinha. The first question, I think, for everybody, I am from Darjeeling, so this time we had fan on even during almost peak winters, and Calcutta, where I come from for work, I stay there. We did not see a winter. So, for a layman, that's climate change for me. So, over to Mr. Sinha to speak about what are the most pertinent climate issues in India right now and how are they impacting us.
Thank you. Namaskar, everyone. So, I'm sure by now each one of you have a fair understanding of the climate problem. It's been there for a pretty long time. In your lifetime, probably it started as you were growing up, and you have seen the discussions on climate. You have also probably come across the kind of things that are being done in response to climate change. So, though the issue probably is already very familiar to you. What is happening in the last 1 year or so, I think, or more recently, since the administration change in the United States, but there is a backdrop to it. Even before the administration change in US, a lot of what was being or what had been decided as the course of action by consensus in the last 3 decades, that the climate negotiations have been in place since the mid-90s. That is not just being questioned now, but probably on the way, to being completely dismantled. We are still not there, but probably, you can see the first signs of the international climate change architecture being completely dismantled. First steps are being taken. So that is very visible. Now, what is it being replaced with in terms of response measures? That is not very clear as of now. What exactly, if the current course of action, what the consensus was to do away with the fossil fuels and move to a cleaner energy sort of a regime, that uh, did not yield much dividends, and there was some sort of discontentment. Both, I mean, the way the climate architecture is structured. In the last couple of years, I mean, this was there earlier as well, but in the last couple of years, you see the discontent uh, much more pronounced, both in the developing countries as well as the developed world, for different reasons. And that is why you see not everyone wants to dismantle the system completely, but what is happening uh, from the side of the US, probably there are like very clear signs that where they are going into is dismantling the system without any certainty about what to replace it with. The discontent among the developing countries is for completely different reasons. They probably would not want the dismantling of the system, but to be for that system to be much more responsive to their concerns and sensitivities. That hasn't happened. But as of now, going forward, the future of climate action, global climate action, I think there's a huge amount of uncertainty about where we are headed, and we really don't know because uh, it's just the first steps that are being taken, and it's very clear uh, what we do not want, probably where we are headed. What is it going to be replaced with? I think there is no clarity on that at all. So that's roughly the state of play on the climate side as of now. Even as the the climate impacts, all of you are aware, is actually uh, getting more and more severe. Last year was the warmest year. The year previous to that, 2023, was the warmest again. So 2 year back to back record breaking years. Every month in these 2 years, except for July 2024, it breached the 1.5 degree mark. So the warming is more or less happening as was being predicted, but the response measures are very slow, inadequate, and likely to get more weakened in the coming years.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sinha. That is very concerning. I mean, response measures not in place, dismantling of the older regime, but what to go with. But let's go to our second panelist, Ms. Meghna Bal, the Director for Asia Center for Technology and Policy Focus Think Tank. Ms. Bal, I have a question for you. What are the most pertinent technological issues for India that you're seeing in this context?
So, since the panel is about public service delivery, I think I'll talk about technology in the context of public service delivery and the problems that I see inherent with it. So, basically, what we see when any technology is deployed by the state are two things. One is that the state tends to see the technology as an extension of itself, which means that the technology develops a political identity, which means that either that there's not much thought that has gone into the deployment of that particular initiative, and I can give you plenty of examples. One good example is, so in agricultural extension, which is basically information and knowledge sharing for farmers, there were two main schemes that were launched, more after, but let's talk about two of them. One was M-Kisan, which was basically a text-based information sharing program. So if you were a farmer, you would sign up for M-Kisan, and the idea was that these advisories would be sent to you on what to do with your crops and all. Now the problem is, or the benefit of digital technology, particularly texting, is that it's a two-way communication street, right? So if you send me some kind of text that involves some kind of advisory, ideally I should be able to respond to you, right? So that if I have any questions, they can be clarified. Of course, that was not a feature in MKSR. The other thing is that what a lot of technological deployments, particularly by the state, don't consider is that digital literacy is very limited in this country. Even though mobile phones are quite have proliferated across, across our fair land, digital literacy is limited. Ability to type in, basically what is a foreign handset or a foreign language is limited. There are all these like exclusionary aspects to technology, but often when you hear about technology in most contexts, people keep talking about how inclusive it is, how it reduces barriers, etc. There are inclusionary aspects to it, but when you're talking about it in the context of development, it is inherently exclusionary. These things are also almost never considered, because inevitably when some kind of technological innovation or technological program is being released, it's being released to signal, to do some kind of virtue signaling for a political leader, right? Essentially, it's there to indicate to you that your leader is so progressive, they champion technology, wow, what a maverick they are, etc. But that's again not the case, right? What is the use of having some kind of technological intervention if it doesn't work? And MKisan was a non-starter, almost dead on arrival. I mean, if you look at the advisories that were sent through that portal, it was really generic, random advisories. And in India, if you understand the nature of land holdings, it's the average land holding is about 0.8 um, 0.8 acres, which means that they're pretty tiny. And conditions vary from land holding to land holding considerably. So if you're sending like generic advisories like grow this crop in this season, and that's what they said, it's not particularly useful. Then let's come to the other one, which was Enam. Enam, the whole purpose of Enam was to kind of disrupt this monopoly of traders in agricultural mandis, because essentially how the system works is farmers have absolutely no leverage in, and no say, no bargaining power in any kind of transaction involving their produce. There's a network of traders who are intermediaries, and the price that the farmer gets for their produce is like 1/3 or 1/4 of the price that you as the end consumer pay, because there are all these intermediaries in the middle. So the idea for Enam was to, hey, we'll disrupt this system. We'll put in like live real-time prices at all the mandis, which are basically the agricultural markets. And, we'll upend the system. Of course, that did not happen because the mandis are controlled by traders. And typically, there's many stories, but what a report found, what researchers have found is that in many mandis, the computers had not been unpacked. In other mandis, they just indicated that when there was too much rush because the system was so slow or there was limited connectivity, they would just not use the system. They'd upload old data. And these have knock-on effects, right? So now there are a lot of startups who are trying to use this data, particularly AI startups, who are trying to use this data to develop their own solutions. But none of it is reliable. So there are these like interesting knock-on effects that happen. My point is that we can keep talking about the digital divide ad nauseum, but I think what we need to think about is design. And unfortunately, design is not really considered as an important aspect of any kind of rollout of public service delivery. I would say even Aadhaar for that matter. A primary consideration with Aadhaar was that a lot of people who are from not well-to-do backgrounds or from rural backgrounds, their biometrics are hard to gather because their fingers may be worn out, so their fingerprints may be worn out. Similarly, they may have problems in their iris system, spending a lot of time in the sun. They may have cataracts, etc. And initially, when Aadhaar was rolled out, and it was used for public service delivery, it was used as a medium of extortion, right? People at ration shops would say, "Oh, it's not working. I'll deny you what is entitled to you unless you pay me something." And so it was used as a means of exploitation. And I think that these things need to be considered more clearly. The ground realities of what is happening in our country or what could happen needs to be considered more clearly before these things are deployed. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen. Last thing is that what I've seen is that often, particularly when there's a new technology, that technology is just released for the sake of releasing it without again considering what the ground reality is. So I'll give you an example to which I was witness. There was an initiative to release some kind of blockchain land titling thing in Chandigarh. And the problem that had been raised was that in Chandigarh, a lot of property is transferred illegally through general power of attorneys. That's illegal. I think there's a court case that now has like admitted some possibility of it, but anyway, it is illegal. And so basically, what the solution was, or thought the solution devised for overcoming this problem was not how can the technology solve this problem, but because it can't, it is that let's just avoid doing it whole scale. Let's just do it for a certain part of part of the city where title is completely new, so that we don't have to deal with it. So essentially, what the actual problem on the ground is this general power of attorney. But you are just wanting to embed a technology just for the sake of embedding it, not because it's solving any problem on the ground. And I think that's another problem that comes with digital deployment in public service delivery. I'll stop there.
I think very clearly enunciated that last mile delivery, as we call it. Anyway, so I think very well clearly pointed out. This is the challenge that she was speaking about. So I think from there I will go to Dr. Niranjan Sahu, who is a senior fellow at the ORF, the Observer Research Foundation. And with the last mile challenges of technology deployment, if I can call it, for public services across a vast and very different languages being spoken, different geological situations, where similar kind of services are deployed but not being used. Other example of Aadhaar and the Mandi was, I think, very interesting. I'll go to Dr. Sahu and ask him that how are these technology issues and the emerging and the present pertinent issues in public services can be tied, and how can we take a leap forward from there?
Thank you, Indranil, and thanks, Bidisha, for inviting me, and very pertinent issue to talk about public services, state of public services. I would rather call politics of public service delivery. Being a political scientist, I would slightly take a broader view of this issue. Technology, which Meghna very well brought out, especially the last miles connectivity, which is a persistent issue, not only about the tech domains, in terms of providing services, other thing, but also in terms of, even you look at hard infrastructure, there also you have similar issues of last mile connectivity, which those who travel in the metros, you can always experience. You get down at some point, and then there you have to figure out Uber or Ola to get into another area. So that's kind of something that hobbles our entire governance system. So I'll basically bring 3-4 issues. One is India in the last, I think I would say 20-25 years, has taken quite a giant stride in terms of service delivery. It is not the same, kind of, that you used to see in the Bollywood movies in the 70s and 80s, that people even die actually wanting to admit it, into a hospital, or, or even accessing education or things. So I think there has been a tremendous improvement in terms of physical infrastructure. If you look at number of schools being built, number of, bridges, you look at the kind of railroad expansion, the ports, it has happened in a decent pace. And if you look at road connectivity, especially starting with Mr. Bajpayee's, uh, the mega project of connecting every village. And what this government the current government has done is phenomenal. Actually, I think the progress is phenomenal. You can see, because I come from a rural area and I've seen during my school days how difficult it used to be to go to your school. Actually, in rainy season it's just muddy. 2-3 kilometers you have to really struggle to reach. That's now history. Actually, you even go to the remotest tribal area. Those hamlets, you have road connectivity. So there is a huge improvement in terms of public service delivery when it comes to physical infrastructure thing. Where I think India has actually really failed even today is the social infrastructure, your healthcare, your sanitations, your educations in samples. You just take out few, maybe handful of states. Rest are actually, you won't find noteworthy kind of an examples of government schools being run, in a manner that it should be. Healthcare, dismal actually. So I said, and sanitation, water, those things are actually still very negligent. Although there have been, at least there have been progress in certain areas. So I think these are. So I think this is a kind of paradox that we have actually done very well in terms of physical infrastructure, thing, but in social infrastructure where we have actually failed. And this is basically, you can easily see that this is visible in terms of our consistently low ranking in human development indicators. You just look at any human development indicators. It's not about just about where you stand in terms of education profile, whether the class 5 students are able to read and write. The Pratham report comes every year. Is a kind of this thing about our the way public services are working. So I think that's a kind of issue which we haven't able to address, and that's the most vital issue, because building physical infrastructure is easier than improving your social infrastructure. So that's, I think, is one thing where we have actually so far failed. And then the second thing, I think, where I felt is I don't want to talk about the last miles connectivity, because this issue is also very crucial. We build bridges and all kind of thing, but there is always, we fail in terms of last mile. And that's where I think a lot of people who would have used the public transportations stay away and, use their own private other things. And so you have traffic jam and all kind of things in the urban area. So that's something there have been no emphasis. The third thing, I think, where I think we haven't actually significantly done much in the last few decades is state capacity. We haven't actually built the state capacity. A lot of people talk about that, we have a overbearing bureaucracy. It's a huge mammoth bureaucracy. People talk that, 1.7 crore actually bureaucracy at the central level, and then states have a different say. But if you look at that's not really overbearing bureaucracy. It's actually bureaucracy is overbearing in only few areas, like in terms of regulations, the rules in enforcement. There actually you have the bureaucracies. But if you look at the bureaucracy where they should be there to enforce, implement, execute programs, especially at the local level, is very, very low, thinly presented. I'll just give a figure. You look at, for instance, India's bureaucracy. Look at the 17 billion bureaucracy at the federal level. You just compare with United States, it's 5 times more. And look at our population, 1.4 billion populations, their population. So you just look at, it's not overbearing. We are actually personnel and all that heavily understaffed, and they are basically staffed more at the upper level. Lower level, where we actually need more official personnel, trained personnel, that is actually missing. And especially if you just compare that figure with the local level of government, because that is where your 70 to 80% of service delivery happens. There, they are heavily understaffed. In fact, we have just 15% of personnel are allocated for the local level delivery of the things. Whereas in China, it is almost like, 70% of their personnel are at the local level. In US, it's almost like 65% of their personnel at the local level. And that's where you can see the quality of service delivery, why it actually significantly different. Scenarios are very different actually. So I think we need to, as urban planner, as public policy sort of expert, we have to really look at how to expand the state capacity and how to really energize, bring your personnel where they really matter, not park them at the top, where actually they really create roadblocks and prevent the files, and that ultimately leads to a lot of corruption and all that, because regulatory power is all about making money. That's where the state actually comes and it shows the power to you, because if you apply for a certificate of the thing, and then it takes months actually. Even with the digital revolution, all that we have, a clerk simply can actually block your entire this thing for months. So you have to really give speed money to get that day. So I think this is something we haven't addressed. And then the fourth aspect, which also the quality of personnel, the human resource we have is also very, very poor quality. If you just leave out probably 10 to 15% of our personnel are actually, most of them neither have the training nor have the kind of education or skills they need for those jobs, because our exam system remains almost like 19th century kind of mode. Your UPSC and all that, I don't want to name those institutions, they function almost like 19th century, catering to the 19th century state needs. So you have people who are basically selected through exam process who have very generic kind of knowledge of the thing, and then you are put to drive certain things which requires very specialized knowledge, and especially in today's reality, when you are talking about digital space, AI and all that, most of our actually personnel at the central as well as state level do not have the skills to drive those sort of functions. So that's where I think we have not invested. So it's actually heavily under invested area. And then the final thing is on this count, I just want to bring, there is a politics also here, especially because the politicians, end of the day, because we are a democracy, and like most democracies, politicians do not have actually incentive appetite to bring a kind of any kind of structural transformation or reforms, like education or healthcare, which would require long-term investment and long-term sort of involvement, and the results also will come pretty late actually. So they would basically, if you look at last 15-20 years, the easiest way is to have some welfare scheme. Now the latest in the town is freebies. You saw in the Delhi elections, it competitive. I wrote a piece actually, in fact, about the competitive freebies. So it's just doling out on that. It's not that the freebies are totally bad. There are freebies which are actually helpful, because if you're catering to a lot of poor sections of the population, they need it to help them some income and some sort of cash transfer and all that. It helps, but then where is the money for education, health, those sort of things that you need really bring tangible benefits and wholesome, kind of what Karthik Muralidharan has written. It's like, total factor transformation won't come unless you invest actually on those sort of social goods. So that is where I think our politics is also caught up with, this freebies and welfare model, this patronage politics. It's not moving out actually. And that's why the politicians, their focus is not really on those key sectors which will bring actually some, tangible benefit for the citizens. I'll stop.
Thank you, Dr. Sau. That was eye-opening for me. But from the infrastructure part of it, I really agree. Last week I was at IIT Mandi, and getting down at Chandigarh and then taking the road to Mandi was something of a revelation. If you can build roads like that in hills and mountains and tunnels like that, sometimes they collapse, but that's okay. But that's amazing. But with this, there's a gap that was identified by Ms. Bal and Dr. Sahu, and also Mr. Sinha. I'll go to my colleague, who's also from PwC, Chandan Dikshit, who works in markets, decarbonization, renewables, and emerging technologies, and ask him, Chandan, as an industry, where can we see opportunities here? How can we plug these gaps, and what are the thoughts that you have in this area? I'll have a follow-on question to everybody. We should all wait for the amount of revenue that was generated by the Mahakumbh, which ended yesterday. I think Dr. Sahu was mentioning how money is made by the state. So, but that's a different story. But Dikshit,
Thank you, Dr. Mitra, and thanks to Amity University and Dr. Vidisha for inviting me to this panel. It's a pleasure to interact with you and my co-panelists here who have a wealth of knowledge and experience in this field. So, to answer your question, Dr. Mitra, when you speak of opportunities, opportunities come from challenges. If there are certain challenges which the service-oriented segments, as Dr. Niranjan was also highlighting, face. Uh, there is a huge opportunity for private sector to ensure that those challenges are addressed. Now, so fortunately, I have worked with multiple sectors in India, be it the energy sector, the oil and gas sector, the power generation, transmission, distribution sector, solid waste management sectors. These are four sectors where I have largely worked, and fortunately, this all happen to be service-led segments. So, in my experience of the last 12 and a half years, so most of the points have already been highlighted by Dr. Niranjan, that there are last mile issues which the sectors are facing. But in my experience of also working with our clients in public sectors around these segments, what there are 3, 4, or 4, 5 points which I have seen are plaguing this the sector, and that is where the opportunities are being carved out. So first is obviously when you talk of infrastructure sector. So I mean, as even the Honorable Secretary also pointed out, India has done a lot on improving its public infrastructure, the highways, the roads, etc. But when you also look at the state level, when you go into decentralized fashion, you will also work with the ULBs, the urban local bodies, who are actually responsible for development of the service-led businesses. So a lot of work has happened, a lot of capacity building has also happened. What I've also observed is there is a huge capacity deficit, capacity gaps of this public sector entities, especially at the state and the city level, not at the federal level, especially at the state level. So we were working on a solid waste management project with a certain state ULB. What we discovered was they don't have the required manpower. They don't understand the basics of solid waste management. So the issue is at that level. So we are not, I mean, I'm ignoring the operational aspects, the commercial aspects, a basic understanding of what is solid waste. That also, that was a quite surprise to me. That itself is lacking. Now, that's a knowledge based gap, which definitely not only private sector, but think tanks, policymakers, R&D institutes can typically facilitate to address that gap. Second issue which I've also noticed that this I have noticed in the solid waste management as well as the last mile delivery in the electricity infrastructure also. Uh, there is definitely a propensity to involve private players in service delivery, be it power distribution through the franchisee route or through private players who sort of do the solid waste management, who go from house to house and collect the garbages, etc. But when it's about documentation, when it's about role responsibility splitting between the public and private, there is very lack of clarity on what each one of them should do. What should the ULB do? What should the private player do? What I've also observed is in some of those contractual documents, some of the operational documents which govern the transactions between a public and private sector, there is no penalty mechanism on the private sector. So, say for example, there is a private player who is given the responsibility to collect garbages from place to place. That's a last mile delivery. But there is no penalty if that player does not do its duty properly. This is a very small example. So that is why there was a question that why only we see very few PPP projects in the urban sector. This is one of the important reasons because first of all, there is a lack of clarity on who should do what. There is no clear distinction of roles and responsibilities between what the ULB should be doing and what the private player should be doing. There is no penalty mechanism. Now, there could be a lot of reasons for that. It could be lack of intent or it could be lack of capacity to understand how to penalize for non-performance. But that is very crucial if, and India is a service oriented market. A huge portion of our GDP comes from services. So if we have to improve services, uh, we have to have some kind of definitely penalty to private players who do not perform those services. So that's I can spell it out loud and clear. That has to be there. Inadequate regulatory frameworks or visibility framework. So I will just quote a small example of the work which I did with my previous firm Deloitte in Jharkhand and Rajasthan. So it was again on a last mile or improving the service delivery of distribution companies. So one of the issues which distribution companies face is they don't have the visibility of the last mile network. So if there is an outage, Who should fix that? Where is that? Where has that outage happened? Who will go to rectify that? What is the exact point at which the outage has happened? So a lack of visibility is what is plaguing public sector entities to effectively discharge their performance. So what we did when I was with my previous firm, so we digitalized their entire network. So at present, very few states have their last mile delivery networks, be it electricity or infrastructure, digitalized. So with that, what happened was they were able to view the entire service network at a low tension or a low voltage or a last mile level. So that effectively enabled them to pinpoint that if in future some problem happens, a service has to be given at a particular point in the network, identifying that point and sending the right teams as early as possible is what was enabled through that digital platform. So what I'm saying is there is a lack of visibility, there is a lack of appropriate visibility on how my service network is set up, what are the pain points, and if I have to solve that, there is a need for digitalization to ensure that I have the full visibility at a central level. On the financial side, there is also an issue which we have also seen in all these service-oriented segments. So typically in this long gestation urban infrastructure project, so tariffs are typically fixed, be it a road project or a highway project. So in some cases, that also hampers the financial viability of this project. So that is why we will have people or private players shying away from those projects because again, India is a cost-conscious market. We all know that. So you cannot be levying huge tariffs on the public. But at the same time, you need to ensure that the private player is also incentivized enough so that there are innovative models of ensuring that private players earn revenue without having impact on the public at large. So these are some challenges which, in my opinion, are there. And from these challenges only, I said, I mean, there are some solutions which can definitely be carved out. And last but not the least, there was a survey, just to highlight, there was a survey done by World Economic Forum in few countries, especially in public sector entities, on how to improve their service delivery. 60-70% of those public respondents who were surveyed said that there is a lack of AI, ML, and digitalization tools to for them to improve their service performance. So, with that, what I would like to highlight is there is a huge scope for any player, not only the private player, but even R&D players, think tanks, policy makers, etc., to improve the service delivery through digitalization and adoption of AI ML solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Dixit. Dr. Banerjee, how are you doing on time? Sure. So I think the panel, very less fidgeting. So I think the panel was really good in opening up the issue. So I will go back to all the panelists, starting with Mr. Sinha. Spoke about the response measures not being there, the dismantling of the older regime. But in your view, I mean, it's all the panel members' view, I want to ask the gaps that they have identified. What do you think would be the response to that? And I do have a question, but I'll just put that in. That will one size fit all, or what do you think is the next step for India? Because India is, I think, the secretary himself was saying that what India is doing, a lot of other countries will also follow. So, what is your view on that?
Right. Thank you. I'll come to India in a bit. But in terms of, is there a policy response which is one size fits all for a problem such as climate change? Now, you are all, hopefully you will graduate into policy makers, practitioners, professionals. Climate is a very, how do you view climate as a policy challenge from the public policy point of view? How do you see that? It's a very, it's a quintessential, what is known as wicked problem. As policy students, probably you are already familiar with. This is something which is a multi-headed monster, wherein it sort of manifests itself into a whole range of problems. It's not one sort of a thing, and the challenge really is that when you try to apply a solution, it creates its own sets of new problems. So it's not there is a road outside of this university which gets broken. There is a simple way to fix this. The only thing that you are probably considering is whether you have adequate resources to fix it or not. Climate presents a very, very different kind of a challenge, wherein the response measures themselves lead to another set of very undesirable or side effects that again you have to manage, and it happens at multiple layers. It's not a problem that can be fixed at one go. So obviously the one size fits all does not even come into question. Now I'll just give you I won't be able to get into the details of everything, but just to give you a few examples. One of the thing is uh, the main solution that is seen for climate is, if fossil fuels are the ones that are driving your emissions up, then the solution is that you need to do away with fossil fuels and bring in renewables in their place, which have lesser carbon footprint. Now, if you present it like this, probably it seems like a very straightforward kind of a solution, but there are problems at every layer when you start going to implement this. Now, for example, one of the things that is often said, oh, you need to, and this is a suggestion that often is made about India, you need to close down your coal power plants, right? And you need to shut down your coal mines. And yes, probably if you are completely independent of, if this was not dependent on a lot of other things, probably you could do that. But imagine you shut down your coal power plants, you shut down your coal mines. There is a significant amount of people who are engaged in these, are employed in these coal mines and coal power plants. There are more than 50 districts in India whose entire economy actually depends on coal, right? It revolves around coal mining and coal-fired power plants. So you are trying to address one situation. What do you do with the unemployment that is caused? And then again, you have to think about that problem as well. Now, it is because of these reasons wherein in the climate negotiations itself, there is a huge amount of discussion on things like response measures. There's actually a separate discussion on response measures, which says how do you minimize the side effects? How do you deal with and the responses have to be such that the side effects are minimized. There's this entire program of what is known as just transition that is being done. So if your certain set of people are getting unemployed because of new technology, new energy choices that are being made, then you have to reskill those people. You have to find new jobs for those kind of people. So that is one kind of an example. I'll give you another example which is not exactly climate but related to climate. But say one of the desirable things to do is to and which we have been doing, and we have been remarkably successful in that, is to increase your tiger population, for example. Now, in the last 15 years, there has been a huge improvement, a significant increase in tiger population. Now, you want to preserve that tiger population. You don't want them to be killed again, to be poached again. So what you have tried to do is you have tried to create within the forests. You have tried to create inviolate areas. Inviolate areas means these. I mean, no human activity is allowed, including living. So that's a desirable goal, to have your tiger population increase, and you need to preserve your species and all. Now, the side effect to that is there's a lot of displacement that has happened from those areas. Tribal populations and forest dwellers who have been living there for generations, you need to move them out. So there are difficult choices that have to be made in climate change specifically. The choices are very, very difficult. You always have to make these trade-offs, and as a policy professional, you will be faced with these kind of problems at even otherwise, even more straightforward problems have a lot of trade-offs. Now, if you're trying to fix urban transport, for example, if you're trying to clean the rivers, there are again, I mean, there is no policy decision that goes without a trade-off. In climate, it is much more so, and it's much more difficult. How do you balance your short-term gains against what is seen as long-term objectives or long-term benefits that can accrue. So you always have to keep balancing it, and it's very, very difficult. And it's not that, no, I'm not trying to suggest that it's something that uh, you know uh, that governments are doing it at a very high level of efficiency. They are not. Probably governments need to be much more sensitive. Governments need to be a lot more caring and a lot more considerate while applying the policy solutions. The bureaucracy needs to be much more efficient. But at the core, the problem itself is very, very difficult. And unlike, in fact, you know, the climate change is actually probably the very definition of what a wicked problem is. You try to find a solution here, it creates very different kinds of solutions there, and you can't do it at every. You can't deal with a problem at one go. So those kind of choices you will see. I mean, very often. There is no good choice. There is no best choice that you can opt for. In most of these kind of situations, what you have to opt for is the least bad solution. And the least bad solution again is very subject in certain kind of areas. Something else will work. What works in Surat may not work in Indore, may not work in Prayagraj. Very different kinds of solutions you have to see. The good part of this problem, I don't know whether I should say good part, but the other thing, the other aspect of looking at the climate problem is that a lot of your normal developmental works, which makes very commonsensical and probably are also straightforward solutions, like fixing your urban transport, for example. People talked about last mile connectivity, metro not reaching. That those kind of things are missing. Now, if you even those kind of things, if you do in an efficient way, they have climate co-benefits. Each of these developmental programs have climate benefits. Now, those climate benefits might not add up to what is required at the global level. That's a different matter. But each of the normal developmental objectives that you are trying to do, they have very important climate benefits. Whether you do urban transport, whether you do river cleaning projects, whether you do coastal management projects, whether you you make interventions in terms of soil conservation and water conservation, just normal commonsensical things that need to be done for the general welfare of the people. A lot of these have very, very important climate benefits. So that's why I say, so that's the good part that I was talking about. Now, all this, even if you do all this, probably at the global level or even at the country level, it doesn't do enough to achieve the kind of things that are required to be done to deal with climate change. But that again, that's a separate issue. I won't like to go into that as of now. But as a policy challenge, probably climate is the greatest policy challenge that has ever come up. I think you won't get a more difficult kind of a challenge than this.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha, for illustrating that. I'm wondering if Occam's razor principle can be applied here. But next to Meghna, you very clearly illustrated the divide that is there, both digitally and also from delivery perspective. So, what do you think should be a going forward step? What are your views on what things can be done technologically to bridge that gap? Even a bit may help a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't think the solution lies in technology. I think it lies in good design. And design, like I said earlier, is just something that is not considered when we're thinking about public policy or rollout of any kind of public service delivery initiative. Um, when we talk about the digital divide, I just want to translate what that means in real terms, because the digital divide essentially is something or bridging it typically translates into, better connectivity, which of course everyone would stand to benefit from, or people would stand to benefit from. But the entities that stand to benefit from that the most are telecom companies. And so I think it's important, particularly for students here who are students of public policy, to learn how many of these terms or a lot of this lexicon is euphemistic for what is a motivated or vested interest. But going back to the point about design, I think that when any technology is being thought of being considered for deployment to solve for a development problem, the first question that has to be asked is, what is the problem that we're trying to solve for, and does this technology solve for it? What are the limitations of deploying this technology, and what are the guardrails that we need to kind of erect to ensure that there is no misuse, that it doesn't backfire, etc., etc. I'll give an example. Now, of course, there's a lot of consideration about using AI across the board, including an extension, right? So it's a good thought. But what is the problem that it's trying to solve? It's trying to solve for essentially limitations in knowledge of farmers on the ground. But will you have a system that is trained well enough to be able to give pinpointed advice to each farmer that it interacts with, or will it be extremely generic? From my point of view, what I've seen with any kind of AI system is that its knowledge is quite limited, particularly when it comes to India, because a lot of data about our country is just not available. Certainly not digitized. Certainly not input in these systems. And if you speak to AI startups, they have the same problem, particularly when it comes to public data sets. So I think that in itself is one limitation. Then the other limitation, even though they're saying that they'll make it available in many languages, is again the capability to be able to interact in these languages, right? The availability of handsets, the availability of accessible handsets, both from a cost perspective as well as from a linguistic perspective. Even if you do have digital keyboards and stuff like that, again, quite complex. Don't know how many farmers will be able to leverage it. And lastly, we have to think about the biggest problem that comes with any kind of digital intervention, is that it serves and is as an excuse for the state to take a step back from a situation where it has to be present. So again, I just want to talk about agricultural extension because I feel like, it's a theme and I'll continue with it. But the most successful kind of extension interventions have been those where the state has come on the ground and has handheld farmers through the process. The moment technology comes in, you see a kind of receding of the state. And as that technology has advanced, the state has receded further and further. And there is like a technological kind of, there's a longitudinal kind of trend in that context in India, where you had broadcasting first, where you had Krishi Darshan, which has now basically been turned into an entertainment channel. And then you have, and then of course, you had M-Kisan, you had digital technology come in, even those didn't work. And now you have AI, and it just gives the state to move further and further away from the ground, where they need to be moving closer and closer, particularly in light of things like climate change that is going to make the lives of farmers so much harder, right? So I think good design, thinking about what the limitations are, thinking about what the actual problem is, and whether this solves for the problem or whether it makes the problem harder. Because development problems are extremely intractable, as Mr. Sinha highlighted in the context of climate change. Extremely intractable, very complex. Technology is not going to solve for everything. It can never be a panacea. Yes, it can alleviate some considerations, but we have to ask whether there are trade-offs there. And I think that is something that would solve for it.
Thank you, Isbal. I think that is very interesting. I'm wondering what Arvind Srinivas would have done if he had listened to this. We could have a perplexity for all these problems here. But I will go to Dr. Sahu now, and out of all the things that he pointed out in his first round, I'd like to pick up only one. We don't have time for a lot of things, but how do you think, Dr. Sahu, that skill development or upliftment of the lower level, as you pointed out, which can tie to making us think that the state is receding as technology proceeds. How can we bring all that together when you speak that the state is not near the problems?
That's a good, very teasing question. I think I agree with what Meghna said. The state is receding on many areas, largely because of the technology, digitization of services and many things. But while that is true, state is also increasingly visible in many other domains. And the visibility of state, you can see it when it comes to enforcing the law, regulation, or going after people who are troublemaker or whatever. I just don't want to get it. So I think state's visibility is there where it is actually electorally beneficial for the politicians. And that's where, we are talking about the freebies, welfare deliveries, and, infrastructure building and all that become selling point for politicians across spectrum. And this is where I think the state is most visible. But as I said earlier, state is not really visible area where it should be more visible and dominant. That is social sector, the social infrastructure, working on education, solving your healthcare issues, and number of issues, sanitation, urban sanitation. You look at where is state actually? You look at this state like city like Delhi, one of the richest city, and such environmental degradation. I mean, it talked about climate change, but I'm just taking it further. Just look at for how many years we can't actually solve our garbage collection, and you have still the mountains. Garbage mountains are actually welcoming you. I mean, this is our failure. This is failure of public service delivery. That's where I want to bring. State. It's a kind of same that in 21st century we are aspiring to become a superpower, and yet in your main national capital territory you have garbage mountains looking at you, and for regime after regime they haven't solved. So this speaks about the failure of our public institutions to handle this kind of thing. This also relevant with the thing that Amitabh said about climate change. Climate change is far more complex, complicated. And there you look at the institutions to handle, you look at your state pollution boards, because I incidentally did my PhD on environmental politics. So I've mapped a lot of public, especially the pollution boards and all that. I've spoken dozens of them. Understaffed, most of them are headless, do not do a job properly, and whenever there will be only episodic kind of things, some or one flooding other thing, then they come to the picture and give some bites. That's all. It ends there. So in a sense, we have underfunded, underinvested in our public institutions. Our public institutions are not only outdated, they live in a different century, but they are also in terms of personnel, in terms of ideas, they are actually in a different. Completely, we are out of sync actually. If you look at personnel, look at our exam system. I was just mentioning UPSC other thing, but you look at, you had even when the government took over, the new government, you had exam, paper leakers one after another. So after how many decades with all technological prowess we are not able to organize a proper kind of exam in this country. So what are we talking about competing with China and other? So I'm saying that's one. So we have to really fix our public institutions. These are crucial, and I'm just referring one major issue about the criminal justice system, which is actually crucial for your economic growth. Not only about justice delivery, your police system, your judicial system, they're also crucial to your economic career, because my co-panelists should know from the corporate sector how important it is, for enforcement of, those sort of legal aid you have for any kind of, business and other things. Those are the weakest thing. Our judiciary, especially the lower judiciary, is actually breaking, in a sense that you have nearly 80 to 90, percentage of, case backlogs are there with the lower judiciary. 33 million, backlog cases in 21st century we are talking about. And policing, you look at, you said about the state is not visible or the thing, but look at policing. State is very prominently visible in catching up any troublemaker or opposition or whoever. But look at the policing; it functions, in the almost in the medieval kind of, the most violent and most brazenly, sort of way is a police force which has remained unreformed and largely, it caters to the people who are in power. It really doesn't, really safeguard your, it does in an episodic manner, but really not to enforce law and order and, ensure your safety and all that. That's secondary. So I'm saying these are also institutions like police have become a kind of a tool for the politicians for to settle their score or use for their own aid. So whichever political party that comes to power, the first thing is to control over the police, and that's where you saw in Delhi the major sort of way for Aam Aadmi Party with the center was policing power. It didn't have the policing power, and that's where also it was not able to do a lot of things. So I'm saying it is about the state's attitude, the attitude of the bureaucracy. Even public service is about control. It's about regulations, and it's also about extracting the benefits in terms of as I said, it's about the political. This is where I work a lot. Political funding. The political finance is murky. You have actually politicians, political parties. The main job is to raise funds, other thing to fight elections, and to also raise their own aid. And that is where the governance, everything is compromised because politicians only concern, except for some politicians maybe, is winning next elections. So how do you break that vote bank politics? Because this is something also where also this issues like climate change also comes because it is about that short-termism. That short-termism, which is a major problem in every democracy, because politicians want to win next election 3 or 4 years. So their entire investment focus will be on that, not about fighting issues like education or climate change, which would require long sort of way. So I'm saying how we create that incentive for politicians so that they shift their focus from previous to this patronage politics to something more enduring and sustainable. That's where I think we need to debate.
Just as a response, I think, and sorry I didn't touch upon this earlier, but given that all of you are here, I think one way to solve for this is to galvanize, is for citizens like us to galvanize and to make demands of our local representatives, particularly when we see trash piling up outside our houses. I'll give an example in Niranjan, actually, when you, actually, when Chandan spoke about the urban local bodies and the lack of service delivery, it reminded me we had bought land near Corbett, in fact, right on the reserve forest. And we saw that essentially what the villagers were doing, that there was no trash cans there. So what the villagers were doing and they still are, they are throwing trash in the forest. They are just throwing trash in the forest. So we did some digging and we basically found out that the service provider that had got the contract for trash collection from our area had not been to that village in a year and had disappeared. No one in government knew where he was. And so, I mean, now we've started this mission to find him and then take him to account. And also some local people took a bunch of trash and they dumped it in the MLA's house. But my point is that we need to do that here as well. Why should we be living in trash in this city, in this day and age, given all the kind of platitudes to, our position in the world as a leading economy in the world and all of that? It really does fall to citizens to be calling on their local representatives and demanding the services that are owed to you. Because let's remember that government is about service delivery to you. They are meant to be accountable to you. They are meant to serve you, not rule you. So I think that is something that could possibly contribute to it.
Chandan, last points from you. I mean, in all this gloom and doom, do you see any rays coming out of there as an industry expert?
No, so I think a lot of valid points made by my co-panelists already. So I will not take much time since I think we're already running behind schedule. But couple of points which I would like to touch upon, which I think I excluded from the previous round of discussion, is how to make the public sector entities stronger and how to ensure that they are healthily competing with the private players like the private players do itself. Because we have been talking about improving service delivery and the lack of concerns from public sector, but we have to also understand how to internally strengthen them. What are the issues they are facing or what are the blind spots they have and how can these public sector entities who are crucial for service delivery can be internally strengthened. I mean, it's not an easy task, but two, three suggestions which come to my mind, again, based on my experience of having worked with a few public sector entities. I mean, in the last, 2, 3 years back, I had the opportunity of working with a giant heavy electricals machinery manufacturer of India. It's a public sector entity. So what we did was we reinvented their entire organizational design. So starting from the operational processes, commercial processes, HR processes, the recruitment policies, the field deployment policies. So we entirely reviewed that and suggested changes or improvements to those areas. The point what I'm trying to say is this is an exercise which, and as we speak, it's not that all public sector entities are facing similar issues. We have the likes of NTPC, SAIL, IOCL, ONGC who have substantial service delivery models, good service delivery models, and are good profitable entities also. But as a practice, what should be done is to be able to so that these public sector entities are able to improve their service delivery. Internal deep dive or internal benchmarking is required to understand where they stand. What are the processes which are redundant? What are the practices which are redundant? What can be improved by benchmarking with people who have done best? So typically, if I were to benchmark NTPC, I will see how private players like Adani or JSW are doing those service delivery models, or how are they doing the procurement of contracts and all. So a benchmarking, a internal reflection is required, and that's an exercise which obviously cannot be done easily. It has its own concerns, it has its own constraints. But without that starting point, I don't feel a entirely service delivery model can be changed, because that's the grassroots, that's the initiation of redesigning your entire internal benchmarking. And as we speak, multiple players are doing, but this should be a practice. This should be focused for entities or public sector bodies who are failing to deliver models. So they have to be internally relooked as to what is making them redundant, what is making them inefficient, and what are the processes or the practices or even the resources which needs to be done away with, and how they can be made more agile. The second suggestion, or again second observation, which I would also like to share with you, is how to make them internally competitive. For this service sector players to be competitive with private players, they have to be internally competitive first. Then only they can be externally competitive. Now, how do you incorporate a DNA of being internally competitive? That you can learn from multiple private players or even other players who are being internally competitive. A simple example of being internally competitive is a performance linked compensation. Now, do we have that kind of a mechanism in public sector entities? Yes, we do have in limited entities. So if I'm right, I think NTPC had done the first pilot of its performance linked incentive or a payment in one of its thermal power plants. I am not able to recollect the plant, but I think it was a plant in Bihar or UP. So the incentives were tied to how much production happens in a day. So I was also fortunate to work in Steel Authority of India Limited. We had an incentive that the team or the operations team who manufactures or produces the most steel rolls in a month, there are 3 batches. That team gets the most incentive at the end of the month. So these are small points, but the larger point what I'm trying to say is, for these entities to be competitive and for these entities to be significantly good in service delivery, they need to be internally rigid. And that can only happen when you do a benchmarking, when you sort of understand what is your redundancy, when you make them internally competitive. When the employees are competitive, the service becomes competitive. And last but not the least, I think this is a generic point which I wanted to share, is when we have been talking about AI, ML, analytics, etc. But apart from that, the important point of doing a AI-based solution for even for service delivery is data management. Now you will have data coming from multiple sources. We did a very basic IT model, which is a demand forecasting model for power sector for one state entity. Now the challenge we face, that it's, as Meghna also rightly said, technology is there. Technology is not the problem, but how you visualize the data, how you design that service delivery model is different. So we had data coming from multiple sources. The solution was there, but which data to prioritize, how to analyze that data. There are streams of data which coming in, how to understand what's the story the data is trying to say, That is a skill which is more important than creating a solution which is dependent on AI ML. And this will be a question which any public policy player or as students or future public policy practitioners, your students will be facing that if I have to come up with a policy, as even rightly Mr. Sina mentioned, that it has to be the least destructive model which needs to be adopted. That can only happen when, or that decision can be taken only when you know which data to prioritize, how to analyze the data, and how you infer from the data as to what should be the right decision or the right policy which should be framed. So data management, data visualization is one of the important areas which anyone working in public policy has to sort of master.
Thank you. Thank you, Chandran. So, do we have time for some questions from the future leaders?
Hello, sir. I'm Rachna Narayan, and I'm a research scholar from Delhi University. And first of all, the panel discussion was great. It was not just a panel discussion, it was something we have to introspect ourselves, all the topics. What I wanted to ask that as states and government, we know that we have failed in the whole idea of climate change and the solutions. But at the same time, we have corporates and MNCs who are also adding to these climate change issues. And now we have come up with all the policies like ESGs and all the other policies. So, and as I was doing a certification course on ESG, I got to know about that all the big four companies and other companies have been managing the data for the all the MNCs in the world. So I want to know the ground reality, like how much far have we reached in respect to all the corporate and MNCs, and is it really that corporate and MNCs have been doing great work for climate change and the issues? Thank you. But I could see the industry experts, so I thought it's the best question to ask.
So maybe one question for panelists and then we close it here and we move the question to one.
I will try to answer your name, please.
Rach.
Okay, so Rachna, thanks for asking that question. And as you rightly pointed out, so all these big four entities which are there are rightfully working in the area of ESG, and at least I am in PwC. So we work with all the clients in any sector you pick up in understanding their scope one. I'm sure you must be knowing what is scope one, scope two, scope three emissions. So it's not only the reporting work which is done, because obviously a BRSR reporting is something which is a statutory requirement, which does not add much value to your actual ESG abatements or not. But at the same time, we also do ESG strategy and implementation. Or so say, for example, the scope one emissions, which is nothing but how you reduce your thermal consumption or a captive consumption, how you transit to RE. So I myself have worked in helping clients understand from where they should procure RE power, from what's the cost of renewable procurement against a captive procurement. So recently we are working with a player in actually implementing a RTC solution. RTC is nothing but a round the clock solution where you compensate your thermal or captive consumption and transfer it to a renewable plus storage kind of a generation. So doing a technical assessment, doing a financial assessment, who should be the vendors who should be supplying the storage or the panels, that is something which you are also doing. So it's not only the reporting work, which in my opinion might not add much value to your actual ESG abatement, but it's the on-ground implementation which all the big fours are doing, and especially PwC is also at the forefront of that. Having said that, while this is the work which we do for our clients, but internally also, I can speak for PwC. PwC is also ESG conscious. So a simple example of how we are doing that, and I think Dr. Mitra can also add to that, is we have a tool, we have a software which tracks how much ESG emissions are being done by each employee in their travel, which is a scope 3, right? And that is reported, and for every employee, you can actually track how much of travel they are doing, how much of flights they have taken, what is the carbon emissions, and that is a reporting framework in our overall appraisal or a performance compensation also. So internally, we are cost conscious, ESG conscious, and externally, we are also not only sort of doing a reporting work, but we also help clients in actually implementing their ESG strategies or ESG trajectories.
Good afternoon, esteemed panelists. My question specifically to Mr. Sinha. So right now we talked a lot about holding our governments and local bodies accountable for the services that they are providing. So I wanted your remarks on such a statement, like how important is it to ask the right questions and what we as the youth can do in order to bring these questions and these issues to the top level, let's say the Indian Express itself, where it is reaching the public at large.
How can you do it at the personal level, at the individual level? Now, so one is, of course, you vote for the party that you think are the right thing, and not just at the state level, at the local level. So voter participation in elections are obviously very important, and probably 60% or 55 or 60% is not very good enough for a country which claims itself to be the mother of democracy. So probably 55% is not good enough. We have seen the voting percentage is much higher in the US, for example, even though the mistrust in democracy is probably also higher there. So one, of course, is that getting engaged uh, uh, in the democratic process. At other levels, I don't know. For an individual, I mean, it has to be a collective. Now, for solving any public policy problems, you can only do so much as an individual. But once you organize yourself as a collective at the RWA level, then at the local ward level, then at the assembly level and the parliament level, then obviously there has to be a certain minimum sort of a threshold that happens. But once you start doing that, and then only the collective builds, the collective is not going to come and co-opt you. You have to start probably doing it. I mean, you have to start making the collective that way. So that probably, and in a sort of in a democratic setup, probably that is the only way out, isn't it? There is no other way.
Hi, panelists. Thank you so much for your remarks. My question is to Dr. Sahu. Thank you for talking about social sector and how some of government's focus on delivery often gets a little difficult in that front. I wanted to touch upon a point about, this is about rethinking public services. And at the same time, we are talking about how the private sector is also contributing. One common theme that I thought ran across all the speakers was how private sector is coming up supporting. Um, Kind of makes me think that what is government's institutionalizing plan? A lot of these policies, plans, ideas are coming in, and government, of course, is open and glad that private sectors are coming in helping. But these are often tenure based. It's happening in 2 years. If there is some profits, finances, all of those are done, then it seeps in again back to the base. In that kind of a situation, sir, what do you think government should do to build their capacity and continue some of these reforms so this doesn't remain piecemeal for short term?
That's question almost will take one session, but I think very good question. See, I think private sector in last 20 years, if you would have seen, is playing significant role actually in improving service delivery, and number of areas which earlier used to be exclusive in the domain of the government institutions, now private sector is delivering on you would have seen range of services. So that's a net benefit. But where I think government is failing in its core area of service delivery, public service delivery, for instance, education, is it's because the government has failed to improve the quality of in your government schools, public schools, other thing. This has also led to mushrooming of private sector. It has become a big business, other thing. Nothing wrong. Private sector also need to fill certain other thing. But I'm saying government in state across state has completely neglected the core sector, which creates the critical human resource. That's being neglected, and that has led to you have a business model which is booming. Everyone is opening a private school and all that, and it's a money making game. So I'm saying, so this is actually something which has happened because state has what Meghna said precedent, in area where it should actually be most visible. Healthcare similarly. Healthcare is the fastest growing sector is the private healthcare model. Why? Why it is so? Why the government, whether it's federal government or the state government, have not actually taken it as their one of the key, job to improve the healthcare and improve the access. So that's something I think I'm talking about a lot of areas which private sector is very good and it should do, and I think government has encouraged, it has happened. But I think the core area where public service, those areas government is the best, because this is where you have to talk about the access, equity and other things, because you have a huge disadvantaged populations that simply cannot afford. So market will fail them in many ways. So there, I think the states has failed, and then the most significant area is about the policing and the judiciary, because these are the critical area of your criminal justice system. Why people have zero faith on police and lower court judiciary? Why people, even with all the troubles, do not want to go to the court? Because you simply don't know when the case will actually end. You'll spend actually a decade in the courts actually running after 1 year, 2 year, and paying fees to the lawyer. So I'm saying this is also something which is the main job of the government, job of the state, but state have actually signally failed in these areas. So I think you can see that reality, unfortunately. So I think this is where I think we have to really, what you said, not only about the rethinking, but we have to actually reinvigorate. Actually, it has to, you have to improve your quality of personnel. You have to improve the accountability. Accountability is a kind of a word which nobody likes actually. In the government sector, you go to AEA because we had some space for accountability had opened because of the Right to Information Act in the earlier decades. Now that is done away with all that. Now somebody wrote, actually one of the commissioners wrote, it is right to denial. So now, so I'm saying this is also one area where accountability could have been strengthened. That is now being done away. You had earlier decade, you had something called social audit. Like your MG Narega, those job card for rural other thing, which are audited by people. Even those works were audited by people. With the contractor, with the state official, all that, and that had opened a kind of new sort of way for accountability. That is now almost sell to a. Then Public Service Guarantee Act. This is something on which I worked. In 2012, you had Madhya Pradesh government started, and the Bihar, and then almost 20 states have come out with giving a kind of guarantee of public service guarantee that certain time bound manner you have to have. But you just now go and check with many of the states, it is completely in the cell. The officials who are supposed to be accountable and answerable, they will not. And there is something called citizens charter. It's a joke now. So I think we have actually created brought a lot of innovation, adopted a lot of system from different countries and all that, and some of them got they kind of Philip, but now we have disbanded them. I think nature of politics has also because now politicians, if they are catering to your freebies or welfare model or certain caste or communities or the thing, they know they can win the election. So the rest of the things are not their priority. So that democratic politics has to change, and what Meghna said, that you have to make your representative accountable and answerable. That responsiveness has to come, and that can happen if the citizens really assert and ask that questions. Unfortunately, citizens are actually not doing their job, what they're supposed to do.
Sure. I think this could go on and on, but I'll end with Elizabeth Dole's quote that the best public policy is made when you're listening to people who are going to be impacted. So, as future leaders, I think you will take all this into cognizance as the leaders spoke here and inculcate them. And when you graduate out, maybe we will see you in some panel discussion talking about the impact that we brought. Thank you so much, Dr. Banerjee, Dr. Basu, for having us all here at the meeting. Thank you. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all our distinguished panelists. I would now request our guest of honor, Dr. Rumki Basu, and our conference chair, Dr. Vidisha Banerjee, to felicitate our esteemed panelists. And our HOI, Dr. Yogendra Singh, to please come forward. First, we have our panel moderator, Dr. Indranil Mitra, Director at PwC. As a mark of felicitation, we present the Otorio, a handcrafted cotton stole that symbolizes India's ethnic diversity, sustainability, and the spirit of service. As a sign of a mutual commitment to environmental sustainability, we are also presenting a sapling to our guest. Along with that, we would also like to present a guest with a memento to solidify their presence. Next, we have Mr. Amitabh Sinha, Editor, Climate Change. Thank you so much, sir, for your presence. Next, we have Ms. Meghna Bal, Director at ESYA Center. Thank you so much, ma'am. Next, we have Dr. Niranjan Saho, Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. Thank you so much, sir. Next, we have Mr. Chandan Dixit, Director at PwC. Thank you so much, Rumki ma'am, for doing the honors. With that, we come to an end to this panel discussion. Thank you to everyone for their engagement, curiosity, and participation. Now I would request our guests and faculty members to proceed for the lunch at F3 foyer. Thank you.
Join us today as we explore discussions under the theme Rethinking Public Services, Advancing Policy, Delivery and Impact. This conference serves as a dynamic platform Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and esteemed